A day of marathon meetings for U.S. President Donald Trump, who had 8 bilateral talks scheduled for day 1 of the G20 summit. Meeting for the first time in over a year, President Trump came face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin. A statement from the White House released after their meeting said both leaders agreed that improved relations was in each country's mutual interest and the interest of the world.
Well, it's also the first time they've met since the conclusion of an investigation over Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. And Mr. Trump jokingly told Mr. Putin not to meddle in the next election.
But all eyes are on the meeting that hasn't yet taken place, the one with Chinese President Xi Jinping. President Trump and Xi are scheduled to meet tomorrow after efforts to reach a trade deal fell apart in May, ramping up a spat that has proved a serious headwind for the world economy. It's the first time they're meeting since last year's G20 summit in Argentina.
And for more on this, we're crossing to Osaka, where Jeremy Ko is tracking summit developments. Jeremy, President Trump's top economic advisor says that there are no preconditions set for U.S.-China talks tomorrow. What does this mean? Are there high hopes that the pair will be able to avert a full-blown trade war?
Well, the verdict's still out on that, but that was in response to media reports suggesting that Mr. Xi of China is going into the meeting with President Donald Trump with a set of preconditions which the U.S. side has to meet before China will agree to defuse the trade tensions. Now, this includes the lifting of $250 billion worth of trade tariffs that's levied on Chinese goods, and also to halt the pressure to ramp up imports from the U.S. Now, Mr. Xi reportedly also wants the U.S. to lift this ban on the transfer of U.S. technology to Chinese telecoms giant Huawei. Now, looking at all these preconditions, some analysts are saying that these preconditions could complicate matters between both sides, and it could also suggest that both sides remain very far apart on many issues. And because of that, expectations have dimmed somewhat that both sides will come to a fruitful conclusion at the end of the meeting tomorrow here in Osaka. But there are also some analysts who suggest that there will be some sort of a truce, some sort of a deal that's announced between both sides, because Mr. Trump likes to make deals to at least halt any escalation of trade tensions. But, you know, Mr. Trump also responded to reporters' queries earlier today. He told reporters that at the very minimum, he expects the meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping to be productive. And on the Chinese side, Chinese Foreign Ministry at a regular briefing, they mentioned that China hopes the U.S. can meet China halfway on the trade issues and to diffuse the trade tensions as well.
Jeremy, President Trump's meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin certainly set tongues wagging today. Tell us what came out of it.
Well, certainly lots of tongues wagging after that photo opportunity between Russian President Vladimir Putin as well as U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, this is the first meeting between two leaders since U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller concluded his investigation into alleged Russian interference into the U.S. presidential election in 2016. Now, U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded that Russia was behind an effort to sway the election in Mr. Trump's favor, but Mr. Mueller had found no evidence of that the Trump campaign had criminally conspired with the Russians to influence the campaign. And before the two leaders met privately with their aides for a meeting, they sat down for a photo opportunity with reporters, and Mr. Trump was asked whether he would press Mr. Putin on Russian interference into the U.S. election, which is coming up next year, the presidential election next year. Now, Mr. Trump replied with a smirk on his face before pointing to the Russian leader and told him not to interfere in the U.S. election. The Russian leader responded with a smile. It's still not clear whether Mr. Trump would press Mr. Putin in a more serious manner when the two leaders do meet indoors, but the White House have yet to respond to queries on that so far. But besides all these issues, Iran, North Korea, all these are still high on the agenda as well for these 2 days meetings here in Osaka. For Iran, escalating tensions there have alarmed certain allies, including China as well. And that's certainly something that will come up in tomorrow's meetings as well.
All right, many thanks for that. Jeremy Ko speaking to us from Osaka.